Hi, and welcome everyone to Whole Soul School and Foundation's Mind, Body, Spirit podcast series. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive, and a co-founder of Whole Soul School and Foundation. I want to remind our listeners that here at Whole Soul School and Foundation, our mission is to educate, enrich, integrate, and liberate the heart and soul in people worldwide. We also support projects and products that are specifically designed to educate and inspire people whose lives have been impacted by incarceration. Joining us today is Kate Freiman-Fox, who is the founder of Authentic Connections, a personal matchmaking service here in North Carolina. She is also a clinical psychologist who worked in the federal prison system for 26 years and who is a colleague of Lacey Frazier, who our listeners know is a co-founder of Whole Soul School and Foundation. So I'm very excited to have Kate joining us today. Welcome, Kate.
Well, thank you, Marie. It's great to be here.
I'm excited. We have many themes and topics that we talk about here at Whole Soul School and Foundation. Last year in 2019, we focused a lot on the hero's journey, which is a journey of personal growth and self-discovery and personal transformation. And I think a lot of what you do, and I want to hear more about your personal, like your story of what led you in your life's journey, right? Because we're all on a journey. What led you in your career and then to create Authentic Connections. But I think it ties right into that hero's journey because we are all discovering ourselves, and deep down, we want to live a greater authenticity and fulfillment and happiness. Everybody does. Everybody
Absolutely.
wants that. So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about your story, your journey, and what led you ultimately to create Authentic Connections?
Well, like you mentioned, I was in working in the prison as a psychologist for 26 years. And when I retired, I knew retirement was coming up. There was a certain point in which that's it, you can't stay there any longer. And so I was searching for what the next thing would be. And in talking to people around me, I just listened to people, and a lot of them were telling me their stories about looking for love and going online and meeting people for dates. And I just thought it seemed a little bit crazy, how distrustful the whole system led people to be when they met each other. And I just felt that it's really, to start off that way makes finding love that much more challenging. So I felt like I could help people. And it was just that simple, like, oh, I think I can help people, just meet each other. And I do think having that intermediary really makes people feel a lot more comfortable when they meet a new person. So, and also when I got talking to people about doing it, it got me really excited. And I felt like that is like my mission, my calling, to help people find authentic love, in the world. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
beautiful. It's a beautiful service. And that's a big point that you bring up because, it can be a daunting experience when you're, with online dating or, in the journey to find those authentic connections with people and to find
Yeah.
somebody that you can trust, that can walk with you in that process and kind of remove some of the fear and create a positive experience for people. I'd imagine that has been very rewarding.
Oh, absolutely. I think, when people really do find someone they connect with like that, I'm just like, there's a lot of false starts, let's put it that way, because people do need to meet a lot of people before they
Yes.
find the right one, typically.
Yeah.
And so that it can be a long time between rewards, but when somebody really finds love, it really, it's everything. So.
And I'm sure the experiences, though, for some of your clients and the people that you meet, right? Like for some people, maybe there is an instant connection.
Yes.
And for other people, it is more of the journey. And while some of us might think with a service, the matchmaking service and the way people connect through your business, right? You might think it's to meet someone else, but sometimes it's a process of really meeting yourself, right?
Yes.
Like really getting to know who you are.
Yes, and I mean, because you talked about the hero's journey as being a theme from last year, I think that that's a big part of it is you the hero has to go off by themselves. You know,
Right.
sometimes the discovery. I had this one client who and he's allowed me to talk about his story, but he had lost himself in his marriage. You know, he didn't even know what he liked to do because he would just do whatever his wife wanted to do,
Right.
and he divorced, and that development as he found himself again was really
Right.
um, breathtaking. I mean, he was really
Right.
he found out things he loved to do, and he ended up getting married eventually. So to somebody who, you know, he he's smiling, you know, and I love to see that, and him having found himself. And so I think sometimes, you know, people don't always want to hear that you need to do your own work. You need to go and connect with yourself to some extent, that you're not always going to find the answer in another person. But that's part of my job, I think, is helping people recognize the, you know, also the limitations of relationship, that it's not going to fix everything.
Right. Because you bring you with you wherever you are, right?
Right, exactly. So, and people have sometimes said, you know, I realize I'm not ready for a relationship. There's some pieces I need to work on. And then, of course, I help them find the right person to help them work on that. Um, and it's different for different people what they're needing. But
Yeah. Is that some of what you do? So not only do you help the matchmaking process, but do you do some relationship coaching sessions with your clients?
yes, now typically I don't do a lot once they found each other. I don't necessarily coach that relationship
Yeah.
because I know both of them, and that's just, you know,
Yes.
and that's another kind of business, and I have some great referrals for that if people
Yes.
want some work. But I think what I'm dealing with mostly is what's going on with you, and it's often a pattern that they've gotten into in terms of something that prevents them from meeting people. Because I'm at that point, I'm working with people at that point where they're trying to meet people, and
Right.
um, I so found so many people who meet someone absolutely wonderful, and I'm like, yay, yay, and they're putting the brakes on. They're the ones, you know, who are really scared, maybe, or they've got things in their head that they
Yeah.
tell themselves, like, oh, I couldn't possibly be involved with somebody who. A big one is like height, and
Wow.
it really drives me crazy when a lot of women will say they can't envision themselves as someone shorter than they are, or
Right.
their same height or something like that.
It's so amazing the conditioning we have that creates these categories for acceptance or rejection
Right,
that can be so pervasive in our lives, not just with dating, but with so many things where we actually block the good that's trying to find us.
right. So something I talk about sometimes is, how do you feel with this person versus like, how do you want to feel when you're in this relationship?
Right.
Like, that to me is a more interesting question than, okay, how much money should this person make? How tall should they be? What color hair? Because some people have even told me they
Right.
can't date a redhead, or they must date a redhead. It's really, it gets that crazy sometimes, and
Right.
it's just things they've been told, and they don't question the veracity of that. And
Right. And that's so key, though, what you said. It's the things they've been told that we ingest without question, right?
yeah,
That just become how we think. And it's
right,
just the patterning. And of course, if we talk about the law of attraction and how energy works and our own personal magnetics, if we're creating all those limits, then we just limited a vast universe that wants to
right,
help us. But
right,
now we've just narrowed the playing field in an incredible way. And most people don't even know. They're not aware. They're just not aware of their own power to
yeah.
block their own blessings.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of my job.
Right.
I've had a number of clients who say disparaging things about about, well, if they're heterosexual, they might say disparaging things about men. A woman might say a disparaging thing about men. I'm kind of like, well, if you feel like that about them, why would you want to date one? But so I mean, it sounds funny, but and the other piece of that, from my perspective, is if you believe all men are cheaters or all men are whatever it is, some negative idea about men,
Yeah.
you're going to find those kind of men.
That's going to
You
be
know,
who shows up.
that's going to be who shows up. So
Right.
it's like we have a big conversation about, um, you're on a diet for saying those things. You can't say those things and expect to get something beautiful in your life. You
Yeah.
gotta think about what kind of man is who you're looking for, and you might actually find them because you got a new set of lenses. So
That's exactly right.
yeah.
And it's interesting to think about how many people that find you, Kate, and your work, not, I mean, how many people do find you and think and understand that there's a larger process that they're about to engage if they really want to succeed in living the life they're saying that they desire? Do most people come with a very tunnel visioned expectation of being matched but not having awareness, would you say?
Well, I think that that's a conversation that I try to have happen pretty early on.
Yeah.
And it certainly was something I've learned in the course of developing my businesses. When I didn't have that kind of conversation, the expectations were, they, they, they I was not meeting their expectations because they were kind of saying to me, I'm going to give you this matrix of qualities and I want you to find that person for me, and that person will make my life wonderful,
Right.
and and to the point of not being willing to go on a date with somebody if they didn't have a photograph of them, or if they didn't know how much money they made, or they didn't know how much or how tall they were, or if they had 20 extra pounds on them or something.
Yeah.
These, and I'm trying to do something that's a bit deeper. So I guess to answer your question is, it doesn't work if the person's not willing to kind of look at some of those assumptions.
And and from my lens and from kind of what we talk about here at Whole Soul School and Foundation, if people found their way to you, Kate, whether they had, a different expectation than what you actually provide, they obviously needed to bounce into your perspective and into the way you're trying to bring a greater authenticity and meaningfulness to this journey to people's lives than they would otherwise get. And so even if they bounce in and bounce out, they've at least been exposed to another perspective, that there is a deeper experience that's out there in the buffet of experiences of our lives.
Right.
You are one aspect of that buffet that's inviting people to go a little deeper. And I think that's what makes Authentic Connections and what you've created pretty extraordinary, because there are a lot of other services that don't go that next layer of depth, that don't invite people to work with themselves. And it's just like, what is it, it's the pearl that was the grain of sand, that becomes right, that becomes the pearl, or a diamond in a rough. But I think it's a journey that my most meaningful experiences in my life are really some of the most challenging times I've ever had.
Yeah.
But I've gleaned the deepest treasures from the work and the expansion and the personal growth I had to go through to have that level of meaning. And I do believe humanity is on a precipice to begin to value the work. We've become so, what is that, disposable. We're such a disposable society. Like, we have more paper napkins, paper products, you use it, throw it away. Whereas at least my grandparents' generation, was all about making things last, or time was different then. And now, with all of our gadgets and technology and the amount of stuff we have in this world, it can be kind of consciousness, or a place that people operate from, where we haven't valued the marrow of of the inner work and of the self-discovery process and of going a little deeper with ourselves. But your service, if they resonate with it, or if they meet with you and connect with you and they can hear, and some people can't hear. I mean, I'm sure there are some people that meet with you and they might not value what you're really offering, but those that do can really receive on a whole other level a gift where you actually give them a language and a pathway to value themselves and value other people at a deeper level and have a deeper experience and a richness to their own life if they would embrace it. I mean, there's so many paths to personal growth, and authentic connections is one of them,
Oh,
right?
thank you. Yeah, I hope so, and I do think, there are these external things that take our attention away, and um, that sometimes we use as a way to avoid looking it within, because it is a journey, and it is a journey, hopefully, of self-discovery
Yeah,
and growth,
yeah,
but that's not always cheerful, it's not easy. And I know people who really use the dating journey as a way to uncover themselves,
yeah,
that it's painful. At times it's really painful,
yeah.
and they need to take a break, and or whatever. Um, and that's partly what I do too, is help you say, okay, look, right now we're not sending you on any dates, because it's not the time. Right now is the time for you to kind of recuperate, or take some time to just be with yourself and enjoy yourself, and what do you like to do, and what things are bringing you joy, versus this kind of clawing, grasping, desperate, I gotta be with somebody. Because sometimes that's being with somebody is just a way of avoiding the self.
Right.
And
Which
like you were talking about earlier, the self is always with you.
right. Well, and the patterns, and again, from with the conversations that I've had with a number of guests that Lacey and I have had over the past year in that hero's journey, you know you are bringing that self with you wherever you go. And if you look externally to somebody else who's going to like fix your life, right,
Right,
doesn't it's just a matter of time before the self you showed up with is the pattern you're still living, whether somebody else is in that life with you or you're still on your own. Either way,
right,
right, you wake up with yourself and you go to sleep with yourself at the end of the day with you. And whatever
right,
that inner climate and that inner atmosphere and that inner self knowing is, or not, or the lack of knowing yourself and the pain that some of us do carry, it's amazing that you have there's space for that in the services that you offer, that people can, that there's a safe space
yeah,
for them
yeah.
to.
And it's not all gloom and doom. It's like
Right.
because sometimes it's really fun. Dating can be really fun, and it's full of possibility, and it's full. So I think that I like to be along that journey too. Of, of when it's fun, and you're meeting a new person, and what do you
Yeah.
like about them, and
And you can
what do
meet
you like
them.
about yourself in the context of them. You know.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, and I don't know if we've said this already, but we're all mirrors for each other. And
Right.
so in the mirror of that relationship or that date that you had, right, there's
Right.
mirrors of joy and mirrors of pain and mirrors of, all the aspects of ourself and our lives are in these experiences. And that's how we grow. We have to have experiences to be growing,
Right.
right?
And it can be that the person you're with is kind of like a funhouse mirror, where it's kind of wavy, and the person, what's reflected back, is not a true representation of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um I think that's something that I can help with too, is if someone's getting involved with someone who is not good for them, I can
Yeah.
hear that. I can hear that,
Right.
and reflect that back to them, because I don't have a pony in the race. I don't have.
Right.
It's just a neutral person. I want you to succeed, but I want you to succeed in a way that's healthy.
Right. And it's amazing for people to have that support with you where it's almost, I mean, you're a guide in their journey, right? You're like an angel or blessing in their journey that helps to listen. And in my language, I'm an intuitive, and my language would be highest good. You're looking out for the highest good of your clients. And I think it's extraordinary. I think a lot of other people, it's sort of like if we're dealing with a pandemic right now on the planet,
Yeah.
there's almost a pandemic of loneliness, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
People are incredibly lonely. And I think the grand illusion is that all of our devices make us closer. But in some respects, I wouldn't say in all respects, but in some respects, it can even be more isolating. And obviously during this pandemic, it's like Zoom calls and we're using the technology to connect. But, as this moves on and we all move and get on the other side of what this is right now, there has been, it's almost like a culture that has bred a kind of loneliness and aloneness, which I think triggers fear and shame and kind of the shadow side sometimes of the human personality. And to have somebody who can walk with people, who's looking out for their highest good, who's honoring someone's gifts, and you get a sense and how they shine, and you're helping to walk with them so they can remember that too. And I'd
Right.
imagine that's the sweet spot, is when you're working with people, right? And you see in them their value that they might not even be able to see. Maybe
Right.
by the time they've called you, they have lost that perspective on themselves.
Right.
And they need that positive mirror who knows who they are and is going to give them opportunities and experiences so that they can find that inside themselves again. But it's so rich to have, and such a blessing to have somebody walk with you. I get that from my own clients. I have people
Mhm.
thanking me, and we don't have to be alone. Like, we can reach out for these resources for these people with the unique skills that you have, Kate, and that I have, and a lot of many healers and a lot of many teachers and speakers and good people are in these positions to walk with people. We've created businesses in some ways, right?
Mhm.
That you had to listen when you were retiring. I think that's the listening that you talk about. That's another gift I see in you, Kate, that I really feel is that this whole business got started because you listened deeply to people around you when you were looking for your own right path.
Right. Right.
Right. And those listening skills are exactly what you bring in when you meet with your clients and you spend time with them. You're listening to them in a deep way. And how many people are honored and listened to in that way? Some people, you know, we all would think that we have those people, but God, I've seen so many films where there's a film called The Ultimate Gift. Do you remember that film, Kate?
I'm not sure.
The Ultimate Gift. It's a great film. I think we actually did a podcast about it, and I can even include that in the link of this conversation today. So if any of our listeners hear me talk about that, you can stream it. But it was a great story about like a wealthy billionaire, gazillionaire, and he was dying. And he had to pick one of his relatives, someone that he was going to leave his legacy and his wealth to. And they were all, do you remember this? And they were all sparring and, you know, sort of stabbing each other in the back because they had lost that true connection of family, and they'd
Right.
gotten into the illusion of money and wealth and power and all that. And he
Right.
ends up picking a grandson that he seemed to see the spark that
Uh-huh.
he could be reset and reoriented to the gift of having that kind of wealth and the giving back and all that. But at a
Yeah.
certain point, and he had to go through a series of challenges. I'm getting to is the grandson, in order to inherit that, the grandfather's already gone, it's in the will that he has to go through these Herculean tasks to basically either earn his way into the will or not, right?
Right.
And one of the things that he had to do was sort of give up everything. He had to give up pretty much everything, including his beliefs and all these things. One of his tasks is he had to come to the attorney, who was the executor of the will, with
Right.
a true, sincere friend, a true friend. And out of all of his people that he'd partied with and done all these things with, all of them ditched him when he found out that his credit card wasn't working and all these tasks, right? And he didn't have a
Sounds
friend,
like a great movie.
right? He he didn't have a friend at a point in the movie. He could not find one authentic, here we are, he could not find one authentic connection in his life, even though he had, even in his trust fund, some millions of dollars at that point. But
Right.
then all of his assets were frozen, and this was one of his challenges. And he ends up having to sleep on a park bench for a few days. He doesn't have an apartment, he doesn't have a car, he doesn't have access to any of his money at a certain point in the film. And this little girl who visits the same park every day, she tends to see him, that he is frequenting there because he's actually, that's like his new home.
Right, exactly.
And she comes up and she's like, I don't know, I can't guess her age, maybe 8 or 9, but she's got a little sass. And she walks up and she's like, why are you a bum? Like, why are you hanging out on this park bench? And she basically confronts him, but you can feel there's like a loving, calling out of him. And over a series of a number of interactions, he realizes that she just might be that one true friend.
Right. Well, so she's somebody who's willing to call him out. And I think that also is part of, the service that I try to provide, and I'm sure you do too, is sometimes we have to act as an interruption to some of the patterns that don't work, like the pattern of thought of, well, sometimes the pattern of thought is honestly, I'm not enough. And it really turns into making everybody else not enough.
Right.
And
so
which
easy
is,
to project it out. It's so
it's a lot easier than to make it something external. Although I tell people, when it's something external, there's nothing you can do about that. So the curse and the beauty of it being your own thinking, your own willingness to take a risk, your own stuff that's impeding your progress. Well, heck, you got a lot of control over that. You have a lot of ways that you can change that. Now, it might not seem like, unfortunately, when we're in the grip of our story, or some people call it your racket, whatever, the way you operate in the world, you don't see the way out. But I know I'm kind of going off script a little bit, but just getting back to this whole idea of loneliness.
Yes.
I think, and you were suggesting that our devices are somewhat, it's all linked together. We can use our devices to bring us together, or we can, people say, people are competing against each other's Facebook profiles, which that's not reality. Usually the kids are screaming, or, whatever in the picture is always, the blissful, smiling family, or, out having a great time at the beach or whatever. I think in some ways the coronavirus is making us all a lot more honest,
It is.
Like I'm wearing sweatpants right now, or something like that. You can't see, but I think people. One of the things, I love Brene Brown's work, and she talks. Her earliest work was really about being vulnerable, and I think if people were willing to be appropriately vulnerable, their loneliness would disappear quite quickly. To say, gosh, now it doesn't mean like taking a total stranger and telling them all your fears and problems, but what it does mean is letting people see you a bit, so that they could connect to you, that you could share the journey together, even on some little thing.
Exactly.
Like I'm struggling with being social distancing, and gosh, I would really like, somebody said how much they missed hugging someone.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's try right now. Let's just try to really experience. I'm hugging you. Can you feel it like this? We're not we're distance. It's not a phone call. But to know someone's thinking about you that intensely, and they're really trying to hug you, and could you feel it? Could you feel it? And it was like, yeah, okay. So, but I would have not known to do that had she not said, gosh, I miss getting hugs,
Yeah.
And So
It's such a good point too, that I really felt, not only are you saying that, there are blessings in this experience for all of us,
yeah.
and in any moment of loneliness, it doesn't matter whether there's a pandemic in 6 months from now, right, as this is
Oh yeah.
cleared, we can use these skills. And there's something that you're talking about with that kind of willingness to be vulnerable in an appropriate way, or willingness to be humble. It's part of what melts the armor that we
Yes, yes.
really have constructed, all of us. We come into
Right.
this world and we're really wide-eyed and playful
Right.
creatures, and we share our toys and trucks and our snacks with everybody at the, at the playground. And somewhere in that early childhood experience, we have experiences where it isn't safe to be totally who you are. Somewhere, whether it's when we start school or kindergarten, at some grade, in those early grades, in those early experiences in our lives, we somewhere learn that we have to put, get a shield, or
Right.
put on a mask, or put things that keep us away from our true self-expression. But it's only when we allow a little bit of that vulnerability and humility with ourselves, and we admit what we're feeling or what we desire or whatever, that we melt enough to be receptive to letting it in again. I think you're
Yes,
part of that,
yes, yes. Uh-huh.
part of that bridge of creating those openings for receptivity, in people, I would
Well, and
think.
there is a certain amount of vulnerability in the receptivity,
Yeah.
is like to really accept a compliment, for example, to really accept a hug. Well, that makes you vulnerable too. But
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest lies that we've been told is that of scarcity, that
Yes.
there's not enough to go around. And I see that in people in the dating world, is that they've
Wow.
got this idea that, and I think it also creates some crazy behaviors when you think, well, this is the only person I can ever love. So,
Right.
so what happens when if that relationship doesn't last? What does that mean? You told yourself, I'll never be loved again, or there's not enough love in the world, or some such thing.
Right.
And then, people can get stalky about that, or just, um,
Lack
behaving.
can make us do crazy things. That
Yeah,
scarcity principle in our lives, whether it's just about income or dating
right,
relationships or food or whatever it might be, it makes us behave in ways and believe in things that is the illusion, right? That is part of the illusion of our lives, that we keep running the patterns. But it can be a beautiful thing to wake up from that, because there there
yeah,
are there are amazing people out there. And even before I was in this world of just a little bit more conscious living, right, more
right.
aware that I could sort of create and manifest in my life, right, that I could,
Uh-huh.
not just set goals, but intend and really vision what I wanted to experience. um, I just I in those earlier periods of time in my life, I've it's easy to get caught in that scarcity loop, right? It's easy to get on that treadmill.
Well,
um
yeah, and then if somebody else has something, that you want, you're like covetous versus joyful for them,
yeah.
you know. Um,
Right. and
right.
and then when
If
we
there's not enough, yeah.
if there's not enough, and I should really know this, but Lacey has a tagline for her coaching business, and I think it's something goes like, we're all just one perspective shift away from changing our lives.
Right,
And
right.
it doesn't have to be this huge leap, does it, for a lot of these people? It's just like just a tiny opening that door inside, that vulnerability, or that humility, or that trust, or a willingness to see beyond the scarcity, that what if there's abundance and I'm just not tapped into that stream right now.
Right. And I think, another message, I like to quote Brene Brown a lot, but she talks about, believing that you are lovable is
Mhm.
also incredibly important. Because if if I have doubts about my own lovability, right? Then if somebody loves me, I have to grab onto that because it might not come again. But if I accept myself as lovable, and it's hard sometimes because, I think a lot of kids are brought up with, love is conditional.
Yeah.
I love you if you don't wet the bed. I mean, it goes back until
Yeah,
really early on in our lives.
it does.
And, so finding people who love you, when you're crying, who love you when you're laughing, who love you, that's really important. But I think it also is really yourself, deepens yourself,
Yes.
that you yourself recognize your own lovability. And without that, really, honestly, any relationship's not gonna, it's not gonna work. You certainly want to find a person who is a good mirror of your lovability, not a funhouse mirror, but an accurate, who sees the beautiful parts of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And can love you when you shift a degree or two, and right, in both ways.
Right.
That also values the journey part of it, the process of life.
Right.
That's even better because we both know, right? We've both been in long-term partnerships, and
Right.
and we know that you ride the waves of life, and when you can have somebody who can see the best version of you and who resonates with that, and who also is willing, for better or for worse, to go through those times when we are challenged, or
Right.
some of our fears are triggered, right? It's
Right.
the people who have the strength in their partnership and in themselves, that willingness to be vulnerable and to go through those vulnerable times. And it's not always pretty or joyful, right, as we
Right.
said, but it's
Right.
also where the jewels are on the other side. You have to go through that part of the journey to recollect more of the gifts that you are and the strengths. And I think that's a lot of what we're doing in the journey, that, and I use journey a lot, but in the
Yeah.
life experience that people are having when they meet you, Kate, and they connect with you, and they can see somebody mirroring to them who they are. The fact that you can see that in people and listen for that in people and how you connect, the authentic connection desired is certainly for them, for a partner, but the first mirror of that shows up is you, Kate, is you mirroring what's possible and modeling those skills and seeing deeper. And I'm sure that we all, if you came to my house and did a discovery interview with me, you'd be seeing some things and be like, okay, so we got these triggers, we've got these, we've got these elements. It's in all of us. We all
Oh,
have,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Everybody, and no matter how much work you have done on dealing with the past, and how much therapy you've done, those things are still going to get triggered, things from the past. But one thing that I think we're missing in this conversation a little bit is
Yeah.
also the idea of who I am for the other person.
Yeah.
Can the other person go through their life changes, be on their journey, and I'm their champion. I'm their,
Right.
and because I think a lot of times it becomes, what have you done for me lately?
Right.
Versus, hey,
Right.
how am I being for you?
Right.
I can't remember where I heard this. Two things are coming to mind. One was I heard somewhere, I think it was Jack Canfield said, the purpose of life is to expand your capacity to love.
Mm.
And the other thing that was coming to mind was Marvin's Room. And I don't know if you remember this, but it was a movie about this woman who decides to, played by Diane Keaton, who decides to spend a good part of her adult life caring for her aging, I think it's her aging father and mother, or her aunt and uncle, I can't remember. But anyway, she's questioned about this choice by her sister, and she says, it was about me being able to love. I chose that because it
Yes.
challenged me to love. And I'm misquoting it horribly, but the point is
Beautiful.
that she chose that on purpose. because it forced her to expand her capacity to love.
Yeah.
And that, again, when we go back to things that we can do something about or control, we can always look for ways to expand our capacity to love. And it also, I think, has the other, benefit. The added benefit is that gets us up out of ourselves. It's easy to,
Yes.
if you are feeling lonely, you are feeling
Right.
disconnected from people. The question is, how can I expand my capacity to love right now, right this moment? And that's a powerful question. And there's always an answer. There's always an answer,
Yeah.
which I love too. There's always something that we can do to grow our hearts.
It it's beautiful. What you reflect in that Marvin's room, I think you said it was,
Yeah.
right. That I had heard somebody use exactly that example, that had gone to care for a sister. Well, not Marvin, but the scenario of going to care for a sister who had cancer, and
Uh-huh.
and she decided that she was to be the one. Different countries, she had to, travel quite a distance, and pause her life at home, and go
Right.
give in service and in love. And I think the same thing, her sister was so grateful, and she said, no, thank you, the gift was mine, because yeah, I've expanded in me, and it's been such a blessing to give this to you. And I think that that's that more holistic, authentic connection that I think truly, as a humanity, that we're seeking. We play it out in the relationships of our lives, but we
Yeah.
are seeking that deeper, more meaningful connection. And I think that's another good point, not only being a cheerleader for our partner, right, but also really the bigger energy inside being that cheerleader is serving through love, is being a witness to
Yeah.
somebody else's journey, and
Right.
and knowing the best in them sometimes, when I don't know if I'd say the worst, but not the best is showing up sometimes.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
To love when it isn't particularly easy.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And in that way, all grow in the process. And I think we've
Right.
gotten, I don't like to speak in absolutes, but as a human culture, I think we've gotten further away from some of these core values, that we actually all are here for a purpose, for a mission, to serve in some way with the gifts and talents that we have. And there's this larger hero's journey that has value, and the blessing of partnering and being in marriages or dating and having the experience of these deeper relationships is to be able to be on the receiving and giving end, so that we do grow in that service to love
Yeah.
process.
And,
And
and, and absolutely, and I think it happens in great friendships as well. I mean, I don't think it
yes,
has to be contained
romantic.
to romantic relationships, but um, yeah, those deep re- relationships, the people that you can call if you're stuck by the side of the road at 3 a.m. You know?
Right. That movie, The Ultimate Gift, that I mentioned earlier, it's one, I cry every single time I see it,
I've
because
got to watch this now.
he stripped down of everything that was pretty superficial in his life, but to see him experience a true, authentic friend,
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that in moments where we felt alone or whatever, and we all can feel the feeling that he's feeling when somebody finally stands for him
Yeah.
and gives him that kind of love, even though he has been challenged with some choices he's made, and he hasn't been super nice. She still stands for him, and they developed the most beautiful connection in that film. It's totally worth seeing.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, absolutely. It
and
sounds great.
I'll put a link for that. But I think in that way, I think you, Kate, model that in authentic connections. I think in the, tell our listeners just a little bit about the services. So, you have the matchmaking service, but what are the elements in your services that you provide?
Yes. I mean, I do have a database of people, just like, it's not like Match.com because it's much smaller and it's a local thing here in the
Yes.
Triangle in North Carolina. But um, my first part is what I call the discovery interview. And so the purpose of that is to find out what's important to you, and um, and who you are. What has been your journey so far, and where do you want to go? And I said, like earlier, I was saying, most importantly, how do you want to feel in the context of that relationship? And and so and then so that's the first part. And then I try to match within my database. But sometimes I help the person set up their online profile or walk them through that. Like if they're getting frustrated with it, we're talking about it. If they want me to jump in, I can jump in and help.
Yeah.
You know, I can also check people's background to some extent,
Yeah.
and so they can feel a little more comfortable going out. Um, so it's really individualized what I can do for people.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I reach out to other matchmakers around the country. So, and there is also a package I've developed, which I only offer to a very few people, where we're really going through the journey, like of self-discovery, and then
Together.
and present self-presentation as well. Like,
Yeah.
you know, is your house someplace that you want to bring somebody, or is it really you got to do some tidying up in that way,
Yeah.
or are you, just people do some silly things when they first meet people, like they tell them all their deepest, darkest secrets on the first date, and then they wonder why they don't get to see them again.
Right.
One, you can do that, and I think people do it because they want to be honest and transparent, but they're also driving people away, and it's really oversharing at that point in a relationship. So it's scary to people, you
Yeah.
know. So, the impetus to do something like that might be good and honest and honorable, but the result is you don't get more chances with people.
Yeah.
So it's just just dealing with all those ins and outs that can happen.
It's a
And
learning process and an educational process too.
absolutely.
And I think what you're talking about too, just like we go back to the hero and the hero's journey, they're acquiring skills, for the mounting tasks they're facing. And I think, this, not that it's a mounting task, but with you, you're giving them empowerment skills and self-knowledge skills and that self-discovery skills that, you know, that again, in my view, I think has been in some ways conditioned out of humanity, and we're in a process of recovering those and remembering those, and I think it helps to have somebody walking with you and not judging you. That's the other thing,
Right.
not judging you, but being willing to look at those things transparently together in a place of non-judgment, and
Right.
empowering people to move through and gain the skills if they don't have them. And
Yeah.
all of us can enter experiences in our lives where we say, yeah, I don't quite have the skills for that, and we don't. For me personally, I've been in a relationship going on 30 years, so it's been a long time. I
Right.
don't tend to think about that in the dating arena because I haven't been out there in a while. But I
Right.
can tell you, when it comes tax time, I seek the people with the skills that I know I'm lacking. You know what I
Right.
mean? In
Right.
any area of my life where I know there are some people that have more of this, that can empower me to accomplish what what my goals are, what my visions for my life are.
Right.
And so this is another way that we, I think, empower ourselves. And I think you bring a tremendous amount of warmth and caring and welcoming in what you do. And you help people to feel safe in one of the most vulnerable places that people feel unsafe is in their hearts.
Right.
Right.
Right. And
And
yeah, I think that's a big part of what I do too, is like you try things out and it doesn't always work. And
yeah,
like, okay, it's all right. It's okay. It's going to be all right.
yeah,
And, that's part of my job too, is like, and pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and when you want to get out there again. Because meeting people in real life, I mean, that's the best if they can. Um,
yes,
and that it takes courage. And
courage.
some people will ghost you. Some people will, you want to start up a conversation, they'll get all out of their, like their panties are in a wad or something. But that's their problem,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, and
And
that's part of that. I call that in the journey that I always this hero's journey is, um, we're re-empowering ourselves, right? We're self-empowering ourselves, and we're growing our spiritual fortitude and our spiritual strength.
Right.
and inner strength, right? If
Mhm.
spirit is a word that, not everybody uses, and maybe some of your audience, that might not be their language, but they're still growing their, their muscles and their aptitudes in this area. And
Well,
so
resilience. Yeah. Yeah.
resilience,
Yeah.
exactly, that's probably even a better word. Exactly, they're growing their resilience, and that's part of, also, while you're growing your resilience, you're growing in that area of self-empowerment and knowing yourself. And when you know
Mhm.
who you are, and
Right.
you've learned from all those contrasts, from some of those dates, right, the good ones and the ones that didn't go so well, you're so much more empowered from knowing who you are and knowing what you liked and what you didn't like and what you really do desire. And without those contrasts, sometimes we just don't have the perspective, and we need that bigger, broader perspective to be comfortable in our own skin. And that means we have to have the courage to get out there and have some experiences, dating experiences, life experiences. And yeah, it's powerful.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I'm so grateful you joined me today.
Me
It's
too. It's
lovely
been a lot of
connecting.
fun, and I know we've talked a lot about a lot of different things, but
Yeah,
it's all about love, and I think about building, creating more love in this world. Because, I say sometimes, nobody ever says there's too much love. Nobody ever
yeah,
says
right. Exactly. Exactly. And we are, each one of us is an agent of that. We're an instrument of that.
that.
And, we touch lives every day, and we get to
Hmm.
choose how we're going to show up and touch those lives. And I would
Absolutely.
imagine the people who bounce into you, Kate, are also that it ripples it forward. That if you're listening empathically and attentively, for the value and gifts in others, that empowers your clients and the people you work with to see the value in others. At least that's the goal. That's the
Yeah,
vision. And
I hope so. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
right, right, exactly. And in that, we have the power to change the world, is to really step
Hmm.
up in service to love, like you were saying.
Hmm.
So beautiful. Well, I'm grateful for the services that you offer, Kate. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today at Whole Soul School and Foundation. And if you want to hear more of our podcasts or see more of our videos and our inspirational offerings, you can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you can find us at wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. And Kate, where can they find more information about your work or sign up for maybe even your newsletter? If they're not local, they can still
Okay.
tap into who you are and the messages you share.
Well, absolutely. We have a Facebook page, we have Instagram, and also I have a website. It's www.authenticconnections.dating.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you to all of our listeners. We wish everybody a fabulous rest of April and a glorious 2020 this year. And we'll see you next time. Blessings,
Bye bye.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you.